It's going to be a fine.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. Get your wallet out, Joelle.
All right, Sarah, let's talk about the win. What did the win without Kyrie tell you about Boston last night?
Boston still has all the pieces, and I think we saw that in how they played yesterday. And using the word dysfunction, we've seen this Boston team trying to find themselves. I think them figuring out roles, a lot of it has had to do with these players looking at where their record is at. And I believe they expected to be tops in the Eastern Conference, one of the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference. So a lot of their disfaction, I believe, comes from the fact that they're not winning at the same rate that they anticipate. You look at what they were able to do against this Philadelphia team. There's a couple of stats that always pop up to me when Boston is playing well, and obviously everything they do predicated on their defense. But when they can make 3-pointers, it changes the complexion of how they play. They move the basketball. I think they ended up with 24 assists, 25, 26, only 6 turnovers. So they took care of the basketball. They were able to make shots. They moved the ball well. And so a player like Gordon Hayward, he's going to be a major X factor if he continues to get better. He showed flashes late December, early January. Now it's becoming a little bit more consistent. And I like the fact that a guy like Marcus Morris, who called out this team, called out the group, he came out of the gates and he was playing really well. But I think for them, it's still about figuring out how do they play this way with Kyrie Irving, because they're definitely a better team with him on the floor, but how do they keep moving the ball the same way? How do guys continue to maximize their production in some of the limited minutes they may get?
Right. It's one of those kind of things that, yes, we know we're more talented when we get off the bus, but we don't play better basketball when he's out of the lineup. So in theory, yes, we look like we're better. The 2 things I thought really stood out after your comments were the lack of turnovers, which were without Kyrie. You can't look at them absent of one another, all right? They function, how the offense was run, seemed like it ran at a higher level without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. I think that with this, because, man, we have seen some awful moments from an elite NBA player. I'm talking about outside of the injury. Like, he has had times where he lost his confidence, where he was turning down shots, where his inability to explode up and down the court the way he used to, lack of confidence in going to the hole to get fouled. So him playing last night in the role that they carved out for him, I thought was very, very special, besides how the offense ran. Because if Gordon Hayward is going to be my 6th, 7th, 8th best player, I'm going to have a hell of a basketball team. Now, how can I get him to the playoffs and get his confidence? I believe that Boston, like a lot of teams in certain situations, it's not, you can't figure it out. They just have an edge over a certain team, a lot like Green Bay always has with Aaron Rodgers over your Chicago Bears. So this right here, I'm not going to try to read too much into it, but I like what I saw offensively. Lack of turnovers, moving the ball, and Gordon Hayward was special last night. Can we build on that?
All right, so there's a lot here. First on the Kyrie stuff. The Kyrie, with and without, for the Celtics is very confusing. Because the metrics are, with him on the court, they outscore people by 9 points per 100 possession. With him off, it's 1.5. They are way better with him than without him. But they're also 8-2 now in the 10 games he's missed. So somehow, even though they are not, but the metrics for the Celtics have been off all year. They have the 4th best net rating in all of basketball to go along with the 8th or 9th best record in basketball. So this team analytically has been much better than what its record actually is, which is, by the way, the opposite of what the trend had been. The trend had been they had been, in the previous years, overachieving their analytics because of late-game coaching, because they were winning close games, because they were the best team in the league or one of the best in 1-possession games. So that's first point. Second point on Hayward. He was 6 of 7 of 3 last night. If Gordon Hayward had been doing it the way Gordon Hayward did it in Utah, slashing, getting to the bucket, slash and kick, I would be a little more encouraged than a night where he's just on fire from outside. But he needs the confidence builders. Right. He hit the biggest shot of the night. Marcus Morris drove.
Yeah, one thing as a professional, man, when you've had great success, and you either go through an injury or you go through some type of drought where you have lost your confidence, it's just like filling up a cup. You got all them, you got them bad memories in there. Man, you got to flush them things out. And last night, what he did, it's huge in a game with the type of intensity that it had. For him to get them good memories, he was stumbling up and down the court. We were laughing and joking, oh, Gordon Hayward. So we should be pointing out with the same intensity when he played a great game when they needed him. We don't need him to be the slasher. We got enough of those. If he could sit behind the three-point line
and knock down shots.
That's where I think. Because, yeah, his slashing ability, his ability to put it on the deck, was always a huge part of his game. But I think for this Celtics team, that's less of what you need. You just need him to be a threat there around the three-point line, and I think the rest of it will come, him getting out in transition.
And one other note quickly before we move on to the Sixers, which I know you want to do. A shout-out to Al Horford, who was excellent.
Yes.
He forced it. Listen, that's a veteran foul at the end. Listen, Embiid's either going to make the shot or you're going to foul him. And maybe they don't make the call.
He shouldn't even been around, too, because he got a bad call early in the game. He ended up getting a technical. He complained enough. He should have gotten thrown out of the game.
He was as angry as I've seen him.
And it's because of his overall character. Yes, he normally doesn't act that way. He's a great leader. They allowed him to get himself back together, stay in the game, and he was a key component.
And listen, Horford was great on both ends. He rarely has these 20-plus point games. I talked to him 2 days ago about whether or not he thinks he's underrated because he's never a big scorer. And he said he thinks smart people that know basketball appreciate what he does. Last night, everyone should have appreciated what he did.
Yeah, on your show.
I spoke to him 1 day ago, and he said he really liked the conversation that he had 2 days ago with you. And you probably spoke to him this morning. So let's talk about the Sixers now. Sixers are 1-7 against the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Raptors. Why do they have such a hard time with the top of the East?
I will first say that I am not sold that they are better than the Bucks and Raptors. I am very high on Milwaukee in particular, but Toronto as well. And then additionally, I think you look at last night and the new pieces they have, I think this is going to take some time. I think they're going to need the 20-plus games here throughout the rest of the regular season to figure out how they play together, how they try and work in some of these new pieces. And you look at a team against Boston, I mean, you bring up the key fact. Al Horford is excellent against Joel Embiid.
Yes.
Embiid ends up, and he had a good line last night, but in his possessions matching up against Horford gives him trouble, and he makes him settle for a lot of extended range shots, a lot of three-point shots, and not doing as much work on the inside. And so I think at some point for this 76ers team, it's a matchup thing, but I think that gets in your head. And that's something that you start to think about, not just in the regular season, but then how that fares out in the postseason.
Horford can guard Embiid without fouling him. Embiid, he's second in the league in free throw attempts, second in the league in free throw makes behind only Harden, who's first every single year. Embiid last night only took 4 free throws, took 8 threes. Every team that plays the Sixers will say, if Joel Embiid takes double the threes of free throws, we are in a good spot. The concern for the Sixers, though, is exactly what you pointed out, Jenna. They have been great at home, except for against these best teams. They have dominated. They've been one of the best teams in basketball against mediocre or bad teams. But against the teams, you're in the second round of the playoffs, you are playing either Milwaukee, Toronto, or Boston. And you're 1-7 against them. You went 1-4 in the playoffs last year against Boston. Now, 3 of those games came down to the last possession, but you lost all 3 of those last possession games. I do think they are more talented, obviously, now than they were last year, but they got to get over that hump, and they got to figure out one guy off their bench. One guy off their bench that can be a consistent.
I think we have to give them more time, like we did Cleveland last year. This is a team that's going through 2 big transitions. All right, got Jimmy Butler early. Now went through another big trade right on the trade deadline. So let's give them these last 20 games, and then we can decide that later on, because it's just not fair. Kawhi, he's got a teammate coming from San Antonio. They make the adjustment. With Milwaukee, they didn't add a whole bunch of new players, added a new system with the best player in the world, Giannis, right now, playing at his best. So let's wait on Philadelphia. Let's give them a chance over the next 6 weeks to determine how good they are in the East.
But you want to avoid that 5 seed.
Absolutely.
That's a scary spot.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.